I was definitely I was a producer on that, so that was pretty cool. Thanks for everybody for coming. It looks like we got everything in line for the most part. And yeah, my talk is going to be on the past, present, and future of episodic games, just from my perspective. And yeah, so I'm just going to get started because it's only a 30-minute talk, and I'd like to at least have a few minutes at the end for some kind of questions and discussion. So we'll just get right into it. Yeah, so this is our game, République, and just out of curiosity, how many people here have played the game? All right, so we don't have to roll the trailer then, but thank you for playing. So I don't have to go over a lot of this stuff either then, very good. But a lot of what I'm going to talk about is today is just you know how we got to this point with our company and our game, and a little bit of background in terms of Episodic. I think we all know what that really is, but and then to kind of go into some predictions about the future and kind of talk about some of the challenges we faced developing an Episodic game. So one of the things early on that we decided to do was to really mimic the way that Telltale monetizes and structures their game, specifically in the format of 5 episodes for $5 a piece, and for the $15 season pass, which I'll get into in a bit. But yeah, our first episode came out about a year and a half ago on iOS only, and we were over the moon to see the game was featured by Apple not only on iPhone, but also on iPad, and it was a global feature over Christmas. It was the most competitive day in App Store history, and we were able to kind of pull out like a miracle, and we actually shared that honor with The Walking Dead Season 2, the first episode. I think they actually submitted the same day that the game was featured. That's how quickly and how we thought we had like a kind of photo finish. They were actually developing probably for another week before they submitted their game, I think on December 19th, and they got featured on that day. So that was pretty cool to see 2 episodic games, episode 1 of 2 episodic series featured by Apple over that really critical holiday period. And that was kind of the last gasp, I think, of premium games on the App Store. Funny kind of quick little story about that is that when we came back from break, the way that the App Store works is it kind of shuts down. You can't see your sales numbers. So it's kind of nice because you can just go, and spend a week with your family and not have to worry about checking, the sales every day. But we had a little bit of an indication how we're doing based on our analytics. And it did well. It didn't go crazy, but that's kind of what our Apple friends thought it would do. So they called me after the break and said, "How's it going? You must be so excited." And I was like, yeah, we're pretty good. He's like, "No, you must be so excited about the sales." Like, yeah, no, it was pretty good. And so he's like, "Well, what were the numbers?" And I told him. He's like, "Oh no, yeah, premium's pretty much dead." And that's not a quote verbatim. So, but that was the gist of the conversation. So then I kind of knew that we were in for some interesting times as developers because we promised 5 episodes, and the season pass did pretty well. To date, I think we're really close to about 20% attach rate of a $15 in-app purchase, which is pretty awesome. So we have lots of users who really like the game and decide to give us money up front, just kind of like how Kickstarter works. And so episode 2, we worked really, really hard. It was actually our vertical slice, so it was easy for us to kind of polish that and get it ready to a ship state and release that on April 30th. We had like a launch party and all this kind of stuff. It was probably the worst day of my career, or maybe my second worst day of my career, because when I woke up in the morning, it was April 30th. I like to get up really early, like 6 in the morning or something like that. And I went to go download episode 2 just on my own personal iPad, and it wouldn't download. I'm like, oh no. And so I try to call my Apple friends. It's way too early, trying to figure out what's going on. I call Nathaniel Scott, who's in here in the audience, and he can't download it either. We know we have a serious problem with our DLC system that was kind of put together via duct tape and some chewing gum. And and then to my horror, we're at Uba Tubas, just down here in downtown Bellevue, and I look at my phone, and we're featured now, and the game is undownloadable. So this was, whenever I look at this, I actually don't look at it as like a sense of pride, but more as a sense of dread and like, man, what the hell are we doing? So the good, I guess the happy ending, I guess, is that within 48 hours we were able to fix the problem, but it was definitely a big a big disappointment. And then you could see now we're getting into longer periods of time between episodes. So now we're looking at somewhere about 6 months between episodes instead of the 4 months or 5 months that it previously took. So we get out episode 3 in October, and it was the first time we went to Android, which we worked with some partners called Darkwind out of Rochester, New York, and they did a fantastic job. We also worked with Amazon to make sure that the game was a launch title for the Fire Phone. And that was a really great relationship with those guys. So it was amazing to see the game featured on the front page of Google Play, and we got some really nice premium sales on Google, actually, and we're really happy about that. We were not featured by Apple, though, and my conspiracy theorist tells me, like, side of me tells me it was because we were featured by Google Play. That's just my opinion, but I think that might have done it. So, or maybe it was our inability to ship a DLC before that in April. So in my master plan, I thought, wow, wouldn't it be really, really cool if we could finally bring the game to PC? Because our Kickstarter backers, about more than half of them pledged money towards the PC version. We're making them wait a long time because these episodes are taking much longer than we expected. And so we decided to bring the game to PC. And as part of it, we were trying to figure out a killer feature. And so we decided that killer feature was going to be Unity 5. We're going to remaster the entire game with all these great features from Unity 5. And yeah, it ended up being, I think, a good idea. But instead of it took us 3 months, and you're going to see this is a recurring theme, it took us about 5 months, and also really hampered our ability to ship episode 4 on time. In fact, we're still working on episode 4, and we released on PC in February. And so, but the difference is pretty striking. This is what the game looked like on PC before we did the Unity 5 remastering, and this is what the game looks like now. And then this is what episode 2 looks like on iOS, and this is what the game looks like on PC. So you can see that we're really taking advantage of the physically based shader, Enlighten, and other kind of key features of Unity 5. Other kind of quick things before I go into more like general episodic stuff. I talked about the season pass attach. I did a couple things that I don't have stats to back this up, and I wish I did. But I decided to throw in as much as I could into the season pass to try to make it more of a value for the customer. So one of them, what we did is we attached the developer commentary to the season pass and made that exclusive to that. And we also we added all the making of videos to that as well. And so they're getting a lot of good value. And then finally, I think this is a really good idea. We did not execute on it, but I also promised early access to episode 2. Again, we weren't able to do that because the DLC system that we built was not very good. But that was the idea. So I think we actually, our season pass percentages, are the relatively high season pass percentage attach rate might have something to do with adding more value than just getting the games at a slightly discounted price. Our episode 1 cliffhanger is pretty good, and I think that also contributed to that. And every one of our cliffhangers, I think, in the game are pretty solid. We enhance every episode as well, the previous episodes. So if we add new features in episode 2, we put them back in episode 1, which I think is really cool and a great value to the customer, but it increases time for development. And we're consistently adding new platforms that we're supporting. So that's kind of adding up into what a République episodic experience looks like, which I think is it's relatively high quality. I think it's pretty consumer friendly, except for the fact that it takes us a long time to develop these episodes. So I'm not going to go too much into the history, other than because I think most of you guys are familiar. But I think the most famous one is the Half-Life 2 episodes, which contributed to, I think, a lot of questions about whether episodic is a viable platform, especially when we were seeing Telltale really struggle for their first 5-6 years of existence. Now that seems more like a joke because they're doing obviously very well. And the big seminal game is The Walking Dead. And again, we're all familiar with this game. And I'm sorry for using the word synergy. I could not come up with a better word to think about. The Walking Dead is a really high quality game, and also The Walking Dead as the most successful, popular, cable TV show at the time. It still might be the case. And I mean, talk about. Again, I'm trying not to use the S word, but that's, to me, is very much IP synergy. So what's going on right now with Episodic is, The Walking Dead's continuing. They've announced season 3. They have a Borderlands one. They're just working on more IP. Kentucky Route Zero is a funky one. I really like to talk about this because these guys, on average, they're taking about 9 months to, I think they're going to be encroaching on a year between every episode. They do 5. They charge $25 up front. It's a very small team, and I think that the revenue that they're getting must be sustaining them, which I think is very cool. And they're also very much critically acclaimed, like, press darlings, and deservedly so. I think this is quality-wise, in terms of writing, I think is probably the best out there in terms of episodic content. And I like that these guys exist because they're kind of bucking a lot of the trends for episodic, and they're also some very, very early adopters of that format. I think The Wolf Among Us is interesting because I think the first episode is really, really good, and I think you can see Telltale struggling under the immense pressure of all the stuff that they've signed themselves up to do. And I got the sense, just playing the game, that as each episode went on, is that they're getting shorter, the quality is getting kind of shaky, and you get the sense that they just got to move on to the other things, that like the bigger and better IP that they have to execute on. Specifically, Fables, which is what this game was based upon, the comic book series, is not super well known, and they signed it before they blew up with The Walking Dead. So again, I think they did a good job, but it's interesting to see them also have very shaky release periods as well. Sometimes it takes them 4 months to release a new episode. Sometimes it only takes them about 5 weeks. And I think this is a consistent thing you're going to see throughout some of what's going on with Episodic right now, is that it's very difficult to predict for the customers in particular about when they're going to get a new episode. And that's consistent with Republique customers as well. Broken Age is also fascinating because they raised over $3 million on Kickstarter. They asked for about $20 to $25 up front, and they realized that the game was too big, so they decided to break it up into 2 parts. This also happened to us. The reason why we're episodic is because the game that I pitched on Kickstarter was actually going to be a holistic experience. I think I said 3 to 5 hours. We're looking now about 10 to 15 hours of content, and we're broke it up in episodically. But that was after the fact, and we asked for forgiveness for our backers, and they were very good about it. I don't think Double Fine has had as much success asking for forgiveness from their backers when they decided to break up their game. And also, there was a really big 15-month period between their 2 parts, which I think, just like in our series, I think those gaps between episodes, I think they hurt us and help, and they hurt us in terms of momentum, I think, and players forgetting the story, they're forgetting that they're fans of the game. But I think this especially happened with Broken Age. The second half of that game just came out, and I was looking at the Steam sales rankings. They weren't even on the front page, and it got me kind of a little bit worried and thinking, the wind has definitely left the sail of this franchise, even though it's a pretty high quality game. D4 is a funky one, just as Swery, the director, is. 3 episodes, $15 up front, and they're all released at the same time, so you can kind of binge it, and I like that they're experimenting with this as well. And it was just released for free with Games with Gold, and then they just announced that the PC version's coming, and that a second season might be coming, so I'm excited to see if they can continue this one. Sons of Anarchy, this is a little bit lesser known, even though the IP is very, very familiar. A studio out in Halifax, Canada, produced this and is still working on it. They've released their first episode for iOS only. I think they're going to be on Android very soon. Full disclosure, I kind of offer up some kind of free consulting to these guys just to try to help them out as best as I can. And it was very fascinating to go out to Halifax and meet with their team because they were suffering from every single one of the same struggles that we have after our first episode in terms of when are we going to get an Android? Wow, it takes longer to make these episodes, and lots of some bugs related to different versions of iOS. And it was just it was fun for me to go out there and really meet the team and understand the kind of the struggles and also the similar levels of success that they had with their game that we did. So, Life is Strange is another one I haven't played yet because I'm one of those episodic consumers that I hear from our friends at Telltale that are very common, that a lot of consumers wait until all episodes are released before they will jump in. And so I'm one of these guys. I have not played this game because I'm kind of waiting for all 5 episodes to be released before I play them. They also have a unique way of how they're monetizing, and that they do. And like on Steam, a lot of what we do and what Kentucky Route Zero does and what Telltale does is that they charge a lot of money up front, like $20, $25. But in the case of Life is Strange, which I suspect is because it's a new IP, is that they let you buy episode 1 standalone for $5. And then you can buy a season pass for the rest of the episodes for $20. Or sorry, for $17. Or you can buy them all at once at a discount for $20. And they ship every 2 months, which I think is an interesting cadence because it seems like they're more or less in the news quite a bit, and I think that's a nice strategy. And they're having some trouble keeping up, but it looks like they might actually do it. So that's really exciting. This is another one. I just love watching episodic games and seeing how people are experimenting with it. This is the one that they decided to do the whole model of, wow, we finished them all up front, and now we're going to release them every week to try to keep it in the news, as I would suspect is what the strategy was. They're charging $1 extra more per episodes than other games, so it's $6 per episode, but they only have 4 episodes. So they're really mixing it up. So $26 for everything. And I have to wonder, I'd love to talk to those guys at some point and ask them if they think that was a good strategy. That did they feel like they were getting in the press every week with a new release? And I suspect that they will say that, because I remember like that month and a half that these guys were releasing episodes, I remember seeing the name of this game come up quite a bit. If there was any kind of disappointment on the Capcom side about the sales, I would just probably suspect it had to do with the quality of the game, which I think it's a pretty good game, but maybe not to the level of quality they would have hoped. Game of Thrones, I think, is interesting because now you see Telltale throwing a monkey wrench in the structure of episodic releases that they kind of set, which was the 5 episodes for $5 and the $15 season pass. With Game of Thrones, they were doing 6 episodes, but at $5 a piece. And they're trying to do these monthly episodes, which they're very close to actually hitting. I think it's more like 5 weeks now, but they're getting much closer. And we did a panel at PAX last year, I think. Was it PAX? Yeah. And Kevin, I think the CTO at the time, was saying that they're really trying to get into the monthly release cadence, and they think that's the best thing for episodic, which I think that sounds like a pretty good idea, and I'm curious after the fact to talk to them and seeing if that's something that they still believe. Okay, now we're getting to the more of the fun stuff. So yeah, Telltale is just going to keep going. And it seems like they're just going after bigger and bigger IP. It's hard to get much bigger than Minecraft, but I thought maybe the next thing up there is like, and then they have Marvel, so you got like the biggest box office winners, and then you have like the biggest winners in games right now. Maybe League of Legends is coming down the pipe, maybe Star Wars, maybe Batman, maybe Harry Potter, but it seems like what I would suspect with these guys is that IP is so critical to their business, because if you look back at their struggles as a company, it was because they didn't have really recognizable IP outside of circles like us where we understand who Sam and Max are or what Monkey Island is, and that they really had a breakout hit once they started to get into larger IP, and then also increase the quality of their experiences. But secondly is also because I think when you're asking for money up front, or you're asking for season passes, or you're trying to get consumers to buy in on your game, it's not just about the $5. It's about trying to get them to get the season pass, and that either they believe in the IP and they know that it's not going to die. Or they have like this reputable, they're a reputable company now in the eyes of the consumer, that they're not going to go away. I forgot to add this one slide, but one of my little predictions is that I believe that one of these episodic games will fail at some point, not from Telltale, but from some company. It won't be us, I promise. But that midway, like they will not finish their episodes. In other words, somebody's going to release an episode 1 with a season pass, they're going to bring in some money, and that somewhere down the line, they're not going to be able to finish the final episode, and then we're going to see lots of really fun articles on Polygon about it. So I'm really looking forward to that. But I'm also very fearful of that. I'm glad it's not going to be us, and that was one of the reasons, even though in our darkest times, I knew that I was not going to let this ship sink, because I felt it was not only necessary for our team and our consumers, but also for the episodic gaming industry in general, that if we fail this, then we're going to ruin the party for a lot of people. One of the interesting things is that I think it's fascinating that Apple is okay with publishers like us who are charging upfront for things that consumers don't get instantly. In other words, I'm surprised that they let us charge $15 for episodes, even though they're not finished yet. And I think it's all because of Telltale, and it's because of that reputation that they built, and for some other reasons probably too. But so I do predict like some kind of colossal failure at some point, just kind of like we're seeing in Kickstarter every once in a while. Not some necessarily colossal, but we're seeing small to mid-sized projects not make it, and there's going to be more. I think we're going to continue to see experimental pricing. I think the big hook is to try to get players to pay for consumers to pay for more content up front. Why? Because we know that all the players are not going to finish all the content, and the more that you rely on the players to finish the content and then buy new content, the more that you are risking, players continuing to pay for things. I'd like to think that people are going to try to sweeten up the season pass more. I've encouraged other episodic developers to steal my ideas and offer the dev comms or early access and stuff like that, and nobody's really taken that. But I think that might happen at some point. I'm also predicting unpredictable release frequencies. I think this is going to continue just due to the nature of the games, and that even if like the masters at Telltale can't predict the release schedules, then I think the rest of us are pretty much doomed. So you see, like it's just all over the place with Kentucky Route Zero. We're now averaging every 6 months, every week with Revelations. I just love to see this experimentation, but I wonder if we're going to start kind of going towards a more consistent, predictable release strategy, only because I think it's better for the consumer. I'd like to believe that if we can get into a cadence and that's more predictable for the consumers, and also a pricing structure, then we don't have to re-educate the consumer every single time about what a season pass is, how much it costs, and what do you get out of it. Yeah, I think in general, Episodic is kind of a dubious financial investment, honestly speaking. I think one is that just narrative games in general, Episodic aside, are really difficult to make. We're really lucky to have our writer Brendan Murphy, who's an unbelievable writer, introduced to me by his best friend Christopher Schlurf, who was lead writer on Halo 4. These are like really elite guys, and he's a big reason why people love the story of Republic. And I don't know if we would be around without him. But these guys are few and far in between. Their narrative games are very expensive to build. They're very difficult to build. I think they're more or less IP dependent, with a few exceptions. Again, like they have unpredictable dev cycles. And I think consumers want more for their money than what Episodic games can offer. You do have the Episodic narrative-driven game fans out there, but I think they're in the minority. And I think that's unfortunate. And yeah, I think I can go into my whole spiel about the $60 game product and how you can see that narrative games, just as their own, don't carry the value that I think we all wish they did. I think that's pretty much been proven through the marketplace over the past 5 to 10 years, probably. I'd like to see some more experimentation go on with Episodic, and I think that if Episodic is going to continue outside of the Telltale model, then I think hopefully we're going to start to see more, dynamic elements to them. Specifically, what I mean by that is something that makes it more Twitch friendly. I think a big problem with Episodic is that you can just watch somebody play it and get the gist of the story, and that there's really no incentives to repeat the play, which is which is a big problem if you're trying to jump on this Twitch bandwagon and having your game kind of sell itself via these channels. More community involvement might be a thing. I've got some ideas about if we ever do Episodic again, to how to do that. And also just more creative ways to monetize. A big reason. So one of my quick little stories is that I was traveling Asia recently, and I was I stumbled into some big like executive meeting at a big Korean company, and they were trying to explain to me like why they would never ever fund and never develop a narrative-driven game again. And their arguments are very sound. The games are very easy to pirate. When they end, and it's impossible to monetize the players anymore. It's very difficult to find creators who can actually understand story and execute on story, and like the list went on, but those were things that really stuck with me, and I thought, yeah, we got to figure out ways to figure out this. And I know that Ken Levine is thinking about similar things, about his whole narrative Lego concept, and I think things like that are what's going to keep narrative going. Episodic game channel, I'd like to think that this could happen, or it's just more of an idea. I can see Telltale doing this once they have a huge catalog and maybe charge a monthly fee, and then you can kind of get your all-you-can-eat kind of Netflix model. The only problem is that there's not so much Episodic content out there to sustain this for too long. So maybe this isn't very much like a play for down the road. I actually think that this is one of my secrets. I think streaming, and I'm biased, by the way, because we're working on a supercomputer-powered streaming game with the Shinra folks. But I think that streaming could be one of the areas to make Episodic and narrative games more relevant. And one of those reasons is because narrative games are very large. They can oftentimes be large files, and streaming them will help out with that. We see that constantly with our game. All installed, our game is going to be about 5-6 gigs, maybe more, on these devices, and that takes up too much space for a lot of our users on mobile. There's amazing anti-piracy merits if you just stream your narrative game. And you can if you've never allowed the player to actually download it, and that interactive nature of the game makes it so we have that advantage as an interactive medium over TV or movies or music. In other words, our entertainment medium, if you just stream it, you don't let anybody download it, it has significant anti-piracy measures or merits to it. By streaming it, you instantly get multi-platform support, which is tough. Even on Unity, it's tough. And yeah, narrative games aren't latency dependent. So if you're making strategic choices, you can assume that even with a decent broadband connection, you can make your narrative choices within the time allotted. One of my other theories is that VR will come to the rescue, and that narrative-driven VR games will be really fun and really cool, and that people will pay for them. I could be wrong about this, but every person I've talked to who is like on the business side of VR, when I asked them what kind of monetization methods, models there was going to be out of the gate for VR to content, most of them say premium. And that the shorter experiences, maybe like the episodic experience, maybe shorter, maybe 20 to 30-minute chapters, for example, could be very good for VR. And so I'd like to think that this could be a nice avenue for the guys who like to make episodic content. And then finally, just like a sneak preview, and then I'm out of time. Is what we're doing with République for the rest of the year is that we're finishing the final 2 episodes. We're building them concurrently because I just want to be done with it. And we're having a much longer gap between 3 and 4, and the PC version is a big culprit of that. But the gap between 4 and 5 is going to be very, very short. In fact, we just did our full playthrough of 4 and 5 yesterday as a team, and it looked fantastic. And it's going to be our best episode yet. And we went out to like a company picnic at Bellevue Park, and it was awesome. And I think the team is really, really excited about how we're going to wrap this thing up. Funny enough, though, episode 4 is going to be our least important episode. I asked this publicly, so I can say this to the Telltale guys, and they confirmed my suspicion that episode 4 is the least important of your 5 episodes if you're going to go follow that model. Why? Because by episode 4, you can kind of more or less assume that the guys who paid or played up until that point are with you. So even if 4 sucks, you have a feeling that you can rightfully assume they're going to play 5. But on the other hand, I think 4 might actually be our best episode, so we're doing everything wrong. More platforms, more territories. We're going to increase the quality, and then we're thinking about our next game already. So that's also in a narrative way, but in a kind of very different way. And then maybe we might experiment with some more episodic stuff. We're not quite sure yet, but thank you so much for listening to my talk. I see I have 1 minute, so I might have time for maybe no questions. So, thank you.
Thanks, Ryan.
I have one other quick thing. Sorry. Oh, sorry. If you want to play République, and as a thank you for coming out and listening to my jibber jabber, please walk up to me. I'll be sitting here. I'm going to be at the VR session just listening in. Come give me your card, and I will email you a code for the game, which is worth $24.99 on Steam. Thank you.